All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Slay at Home Speaker Series, sponsored by Weston. We make skis, we make split boards, we make all kinds of good stuff. Let us know where you're tuning in from this evening here in the chat. Open up that chat box. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I see Joe coming in from Wilson. Joe, thanks for joining us tonight, buddy. I see Pat tuning in from Denver. Good to see you, buddy. Always a pleasure. Pat's a frequent flyer here. We've got Denver. I've seen a lot of Jackson tonight. We'll kind of let the rest of the posse join up here. But again, thanks for joining us. If you don't know who Weston is, again, we're a manufacturer based here in Colorado. You can check us out at westonbackcountry.com. We've got all kinds of resources for education. All kinds of good stuff. So definitely check us out. We're proud to sponsor the Slay at Home Speaker Series every Thursday at 6 p.m. We've got 2 more episodes left. You can check out all the Slay at Home Speaker Series on our website under the Education tab. Also on our Facebook or YouTube, you can find the Slay at Home Series, all of the previous episodes. So definitely check them out there. We're all about education and community. We do all kinds of great stuff. So check us out. With that said, we'll kind of let everyone filter in here. We've got some great panelists tonight. Really cool topic this evening, touring in the Tetons. One of my favorite places on earth, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Tonight, our sponsors include Teton Split Fest. Big fan of what those guys are doing at Teton Split Fest. Bummer I can't be up there this year, but really stoked to have Teton Split Fest going on again. I know our friends from Chimera and Palace and Franco are all up there, and the Weston crew's up there as well. So definitely, if you're in Jackson this weekend, stop by Franco's Shape Shack over there at JHMR Resort and say what's up to all the gang at Teton Split Fest. Check them out at tetonsplitfest.com. Tonight is also brought to you by Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. Most of the guides, I think all the guides on tonight actually work for Jackson Hole Mountain Guides, among many other illustrious guide services. So we're really stoked to have them involved. Also, Teton Backcountry Rentals, your #1 source for all kinds of outdoor gear from summer to winter. Big shout out to TBR. They've got, everything you need. And also Teton Mountaineering, a fantastic local shop. Big fan of Teton Mountaineering as well, right there in the main square in Jackson. So big shout out to all the sponsors tonight. We really appreciate it. Tonight we'll be covering Teton Pass and Grand Teton National Park. So stay tuned. We've got something for everybody tonight. I'm Ben. I'm your host, Matt Ben in the Backcountry. I'm the brand experience manager here at Weston. If it's event public facing, it's kind of what I have my hands in. If it's guide based, education based, that's really what I love being a part of. I also work on our design team, but I do have the pleasure of managing our professional guide team. We have over 45 professional mountain guides that we sponsor here at Weston, and that's who we really like to focus on, the people that have devoted their lives to educating and building community in the backcountry. So that's what we do. That's who I am. Give me a shout at Ben in the Backcountry if you have any questions. Hit me up in the chat if you want to as well. Our first panelist this evening is Izzy Lazarus, another guide team member. Really stoked to have Izzy on tonight. Izzy, hop on here and say hello to the crew. We're stoked to have you.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I work for Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. I've been with them for 4 years, which is about how long I've lived in Jackson and consistently spent time in the Tetons. I'm a split guide, avalanche courses, as well as guide alpine and rock climbing ascents in the summertime in the Tetons, but also spend some time in the Northwest in spring. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome, Izzy. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Izzy's a frequent flyer here on the Slay at Home series and one of the first guides that we actually ever put on our team. So we're just blessed to have Izzy on the crew. So stoked to have her. Next up, we've got Patrick Collins. Pat, thanks so much for being here, brother. Another amazing addition of our guide crew. We're stoked to have Pat on board this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben. I've been working with Jackson Hole Mountain Guides for the past 5 seasons or so. as a splitboard guide and avalanche educator. I'm also the founder of Teton Backcountry Rentals. So if y'all need any splitboards or backcountry skis or avalanche gear during the winter time, yeah, you can find me there or hire me at Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. Yeah, stoked to be on the crew tonight.
Yeah, buddy, we're stoked to have you, aka Pal Daddy, aka Pal Collins. I couldn't find you in my phone because it was under Pal. Next up, we've got Peter Stone. Pete, thanks so much for being here, brother. We are stoked to have you.
Hey, my video is
I
currently
got
disabled.
you here. Let the host figure this. Boom.
Oh,
You turned on my video.
Oh,
Not
leave
Pete's.
yours on too. We're split borders. We're not tech people. There you go. That ought to get you there, Peter.
okay.
There he is.
Hey, that's me. Hey, I'm Pete Stone. I live here in Jackson, Wyoming, and I work as a year-round mountain guide as well. I work most frequently at Teton Backcountry Guides, which operates on both sides of the Tetons, the Jackson side as well as Teton Valley side. And I also work as a ski guide at Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. I guide quite a bit of alpine climbing in the summer, both at Jackson Hole Mountain Guides as well as at International Mountain Guides in Washington and Alaska. And I'm psyched to be part of the crew tonight.
Yeah, buddy. Pete, we're so stoked to have you, man. Really looking forward to this evening. And last but certainly not least, we've got Tom Turiano. Tom, man, really stoked to have you on the panel tonight. Big fan of all your work, and we're just blessed to have you. Thanks so much for being here, buddy.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everybody. I came to Jackson from New York via Colorado in 1985. I came here to teach skiing, and I fell in with Bill Briggs, the first guy to ski the Grand Teton in 1971 at the Snow King Ski School, where I worked for 3 winters. Started guiding Teton Pass tours during that time, and soon started teaching skiing at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, guiding yurt trips with Rendezvous Ski Tours, and began a long career with Exum Mountain Guides in 1989, climbing and skiing in the Tetons and Wind Rivers. And what might interest split boarders is I have a 21-year-old daughter who lives in Indonesia and makes her living as a photographer on Instagram. So you can check her out at El Turiano. These days, I sell my existing books and have a few projects in the works and try to ski as much as I can.
Awesome. Tom, thanks so much for being here again. You guys definitely will have some more on Tom's books, but definitely track those down. They're probably the best resource that we'll discuss this evening. So, all right. And again, big shout out to Teton Split Fest. Check them out, tetonsplitfest.com. Run over to Franco Snow Shapes. If you're not familiar with it, right at the base of JHMR, and you can register at tetonsplitfest.com. Really stoked to be associated with this amazing Split Fest. So tonight we're going to be discussing a variety of topics. We'll kind of go over planning, a trip to the Tetons. We'll, discuss these general areas here that you can see on the screen, Teton Pass. We'll briefly touch on JHMR Backcountry, and then we'll try to focus mainly on Grand Teton National Park. If you guys have specific questions, though, let us know. That's what the chat is for. Drop a question there in the chat. Just make sure you hit, all attendees. Unless it's, a private question that you want to ask one of the guides, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But really use these resources. We want this to be a conversation. We want you to ask questions, especially if you're new to the area, you're trying to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions tonight. We couldn't cover Teton Pass, in 1 hour. So we really just had to pick a couple different areas to hit on tonight. Let us know if you have any questions. At the end, we even have, some secret stashes, so you better stay tuned for that. We'll have a Q&A, right? So question and answer, any questions we can't get to live right now, we'll try to answer at the end of the presentation. So before we do get started, I just want to, reiterate and just kind of drill into us that, backcountry travel is inherently dangerous. The Tetons specifically, it's gnarly terrain out there. We've had a rough season here in Colorado as far as avalanches. And I just want to, really drill into people that, you have to have a lot of knowledge about a variety of different topics before you're even planning a trip. Everything from being an expert on your gear, having it all completely dialed, and even spare parts, to avalanche education. Having that level 1 is really what we recommend. Having the right skill level and fitness to go ride the terrain you're trying to access, and even group dynamics and decision making while you're out on trail. Checking forecasts, both weather and avalanche forecasts are critical to trip planning. And guidebooks, using a guidebook for, plan A, B, C, and D, having multiple options and a lot of knowledge of the area is all super important. We've discussed all of these topics in the Slay at Home series already. So that's why this presentation is only on terrain. It's not that we just want to talk about sick lines. It's that we've really hit all of these topics. If you're curious about any of this stuff, go watch those previous episodes of the Slay at Home series. And if you have any doubts about these things, go with a guide. That's what they're for. I wish I would have used a guide the first few times I went into the Tetons. I would have had a much more enjoyable experience. And again, it's really important to know the difference between backcountry skiing areas and spring mountaineering areas, right? Like all of these zones have specific timelines, specific snowpacks and certain times. And you really, need to be aware of that. You shouldn't be tagging big coolars in the middle of the winter. It's just not safe. And it's very important to know when and where you should be hitting these lines. So that being said, we're going to kind of quickly discuss forecasting and the forecast in the Jackson area. If you're looking for the local forecast in Jackson, jhavalanche.org is where you want to go, the Bridger Teton Avalanche Center. You can see we've got the Teton zone marked here. If you go to the website, you click on this zone, you're going to get the issues that they've been seeing in that area over the whole season, and really every day it's going to be an updated forecast, right? Weston is a proud sponsor of the BTAC, among a ton of other great brands. So definitely, visit that website, learn about the forecast before you ever even get into any of these areas we're going to discuss tonight, right? And with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to the guides here to discuss a few of the avalanche issues that we've been seeing in the forecast recently.
Cool. I guess I'll start out with the persistent slab problem that we're dealing with here. The important thing to remember about our version of a persistent slab at this time of the winter is that it's going to be a little more isolated than maybe you would deal with in like Colorado or Utah. And so it's really important to actually like understand the snowpack and know where to go in terms of not being able to trigger those persistent slabs. For those of you who don't know what a persistent slab is, it's essentially a weak grain that's sitting a ways down actually in the snowpack that if triggered in the correct way could produce a large to very large slab avalanche. These can also step down from wind loaded features, and we're going to talk about wind slab now. So for wind slab avalanches, this is when wind collects on the leeward side of the slope. So whichever direction the wind is blowing into, and create avalanches that can be either small to large in depth and in propagation, and could easily flush a human being down a slope or down a chute.
Nice. And you can see, from this diagram that this stuff is occurring on all aspects, which is kind of interesting to see. You guys let us know if you're not familiar with this avalanche rose, and we can go into it a little bit more, but just, wanted to touch on these avalanche concerns, obviously, before we discuss terrain. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate that. And then, quickly, the local guide operations. These are the guide operations that operate in the park and up at the pass. Just great organizations. Like, we're big fans of all of these companies. We specifically work with Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. We do several different co-branded programs there at JHMG. If anyone's looking for, an Area 1, definitely, check those out. Looks like we had a question on why is the persistent slab more isolated? Pete, you want to answer that one for us?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So essentially, like, we're dealing with areas where snowpack is either like thinner because of wind stripping or because it's already avalanched, or I guess the opposite would be deeper snowpack. So if you're farther away from that layer, you're much less likely to trigger it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. James, that answer your question, buddy? Appreciate it. So, next up, I do want to kind of give shout outs to some of my favorite guidebooks in this area. There are a ton. I'm a borderline guidebook hoarder, just like the owner of Weston. But our favorite ones are obviously Tom's. That's why he's on the call tonight. They're great books. They're great resources. If you can track one down, I highly recommend it. Also, the maps. You can see the maps he has, of the park in the past that are accompany his books are great resources. The Jackson Hole Ski Atlas. This is more, it's not a guidebook. It's more a book of awesome pictures of the zones, which is also, very helpful. But the guidebooks are just amazing, amazing resources, right? The Black Book is also like, there's some pretty gnarly stuff in there in the Black Book. Like that is a lot of epic terrain, where the Jackson Hole Ski Atlas covers the pass, covers a whole lot of different stuff. So really, really cool. And then also, shout out to Mark Smiley and Mountain Sense and Smiley Project. Mark's a great resource in the area. That's how I got into the park, years ago. He has some really great resources. You should check those out on his websites. And then Teton Pass Descents is a newer book by Jamie Weeks. You can get that on Rack Up. It's also, I believe, available on Beacon. So these guidebooks are all fantastic. And again, big shout out to Tom's books. He's done a lot. Tom, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write your books in the first place, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I moved to Jackson after dropping out of college at age 18, and but I wasn't really interested in letting go of my academic side. I always enjoyed writing, and so working on the books was a natural progression. Also, working with Bill Briggs, as I mentioned, actually I ended up rooming with Bill Briggs. He had a couple extra rooms, and so I got to know Bill really well, and I became inspired by the long history of adventuring in these mountains. And so I started interviewing, or kind of got the idea to write a history of it, and that's kind of how it started. And so I started interviewing everyone I could think of, and that created this web of contacts. And I just interviewed people that were out there in the old days, including some really old timers, to find out about their experiences. And so the books started off kind of as history books, and but I wanted to describe the routes as well. So the answer to that was to describe the routes through the experiences of the folks who were there first. So I don't know if you can get your hands on the first on Teton skiing. I say, well, Bill Briggs rappelled here, Bill Briggs skied here. I don't say rappel here, ski here. I describe it through Bill's experience. This is where he tucked and rolled and that kind of thing. So that's what I tried to do now with all the books that I work on. I'm right now working on a revision of my third book, Select Peaks of Greater Yellowstone, and that's got a ton of history in it. So I'm excited about that one to be revised.
Right, I am as well. That is one thing I really love about your books. It's not just this is the trailhead, this is how long it takes, this is the elevation, but it's really, really cool history. And like I'm kind of a history nerd too. I just love everything that you put into your books. They're great books, not just guidebooks. So really, really cool. Definitely pick those up if you can track them down. You can find some of his books, available at Teton Mountaineering, Wilson Backcountry Sports, selectpeaks.com, and on your website as well, right, Tom?
Yeah, that's my website, selectpeaks.com.
Killer.
Yeah, and if you're in town and you don't want me to ship them, you can come pick them up. I can tell you how to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe shoot him a PM if you're in need of a sick guidebook there.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome resource. I wish I would have known that when I was figuring stuff out. All right, so now on to Teton Pass. I'm going to kind of kick it over to the guides here. We're going to discuss Teton Pass, different touring areas there, everything from etiquette to terrain. Please let us know if you have questions. Again, that's what we're here for tonight.
Great. So we're going to start with Teton Pass. And a lot of the reason why we're starting here is because this is some of the low-hanging fruit that people can see from the road. And when you're commuting to the area, this seems like the stuff you want to go ski because it's easy access. But starting off with some of the etiquette, we want to make sure that people are kind of following the rules and not pissing off locals. That way we can keep the pass open for skiing. That is one of the risks that we as skiers pose on the area, is having YDOT and the transportation corridors shut us down for skiing. We've had multiple skiers and riders have triggered avalanches that have hit the roadways in past years. And it's just not acceptable. And so we'll dive into that a little more, as well as talk about some of these things like Abbey danger, where to park, can't bring a trailer up the pass, that's kind of a no-go. And where to be hitchhiking versus walking on the road versus putting your skins on and walking back to your car that way. Do you want to jump into the Teton Backcountry Alliance pledge here? Anybody want to talk about that?
I can jump in, or maybe.
Yeah, great. Go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, so the Teton Pass pledge, a little bit of a tongue twister. It's a conglomerate of ideas that, similar to skier code of conduct that you might see if you paid attention at every ski resort in North America, saying by skiing at Teton Pass, we're agreeing as recreational users to practice humility and respect. I think really that means like deciding what to ski based on not just your own desire, but what's good for the community, not skiing things on a considerable day that can ski the road, making sure that we're staying out of harm's way, communicating with people above or below us. Similar concept with thinking about consequences. The glory, the gut of glory, that's a huge concern, as well as twin slides. But there's also terrain where it's pretty easy to end up skiing on top of somebody. And we've definitely had instances of folks sliding in other parties. So figuring out if you see somebody ahead of you, how to communicate, hey, where are you guys headed, in a friendly manner. Oh, we're headed to the same place. Let's make sure that we ski one at a time. I've used like, hey, can I call you when I'm at the bottom? There's a lot of cell service in the Tetons, or you call me, what have you. Dogs, I'm a dog owner. I'm currently being harassed by my 2 dogs. And I like skiing with them, but you got to be a responsible dog owner. We are encouraging people to keep their dogs on a leash. That means not let them out of the car off a leash and then put them on, have a leash on, bring them out, and don't take the leash off until you're quite a ways away from the road. I've seen dogs running across Teton Pass, and it's scary for the dogs, for cars. Personally, I hate seeing the dog poop melt out in the spring, so pick it up. Carpooling, with COVID, it's definitely hard to encourage that, but parking is really tight, and parking is a privilege, not a right. So finding ways, skiing with your pod, or wearing masks and rolling the windows down if you feel comfortable with it. But finding ways to reduce parking traffic up at the top of the pass, overflow parking, Phillips Bench. Last one, spread the word. Anytime you see a Department of Transportation worker, whether it's Wyoming or Colorado, just say thanks. Those guys and those ladies and gentlemen are putting their lives on the line in places like the Tetons to make sure that our roadways are open, not just for us to go skiing, but for us to all get to work and get back to our families at night. So that's what we're saying here in the Tetons is a good way to act. So if you're skiing on Teton Pass, just give that a read over, make it part of your tour plan. Am I going to act accordingly? And this is a puppy.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to say a little bit about Teton Backcountry Alliance. I helped co-found it, and Pete was there in those days when we were getting it going a few years ago, to address a lot of the issues that Izzy spoke about, and Pat, about avalanches on on the highway, being skier triggered, and parking issues and dogs. And so we've been working on a lot of outreach on that and raising awareness. Also raising awareness about the life cycle of bighorn sheep and the impact skiers have on them and how we can minimize our impacts. And then lately we're working on inspiring, or I should say, reestablishing an ethic for hybrid skiing. And that is people who use snowmobiles to access terrain, to be respectful of the tradition of adventure, skill, and fitness needed to climb these mountains, and not to mention the connection with nature that is lost when snowmobiles go ripping by. So to be respectful of skiers that are climbing the mountain. And I think the biggest message, the message we're going to come out with essentially is communicate. You know, if you're on a snow machine and you're ripping by some skiers, stop and say hi and ask them where they're going, or you ask the skiers where they're going, and say, hey, we'll do our best not to go there. We'll go someplace else because we can. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been up to at Teton Backcountry Alliance. And you can learn more at that web link there, tetonbackcountryalliance.org.
This is the top
Okay.
lot at Teton Pass. We've got webcams facing in each direction. There's even a webcam pointing on the Glory boot pack, which is pretty unique for a backcountry run. And so we use this not only to check road conditions, but to check what the parking situation is like. Can I park at the top, or do I need to consider hitchhiking from the bottom? So check that out. You can get to it pretty easily by typing in Teton Pass webcam. I forget the exact website, but it's on the DOT site.
Yeah. Hey, Pat, why don't we go back one slide or so and just talk about like the etiquette for waiting in line for a parking spot.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a guy up there and his name is Jay Pistano, and he is one of our ambassadors for Teton Pass. And unfortunately, his job isn't supposed to be directing traffic, but it ends up being directing traffic most Saturdays. And so like the big thing is to get out of your car, pull off all the way into the pullout, get out of your car and check with the other cars about who's in line, because there's been several altercations up there about fighting over parking spots because everybody's in a rush to get powder turns, and we're really just trying to get everybody to be kind and considerate of other people. Also, try to park close together so that there's actually room for everybody to park up there.
That's a great point. We want to help Jay do his job and keep it civil up there. Just worth noting too, there's an overflow lot on the east side, about a quarter mile down the road. And there's more often spots there, although with how busy 2021 has been, that fills up pretty early on the weekend mornings as well. So it's starting to be like, if you want to park at the top of the pass on a weekend, you've got to be there before 7:30 in the morning if you want a spot.
That's right.
Aim for 6.
Too early for me.
Awesome. So this is a aerial view of Mount Glory, and you can see here some of the major slide paths and road cuts are redded out here. In terms of the main slide paths, we're talking about Glory Bowl and Twin Slides to the lookers left of Glory Bowl. Both of them have the potential and consistently do hit the roadway. And it's important that those are not skier triggered avalanches that hit the roadway. And so on considerable days, we recommend avoiding those two areas. As you can see, there are plenty of places to ski off of Mount Glory. And one thing that I've been seeing a lot this year and in past years, people will ski either Glory Bowl or something that puts them at the bottom of Glory Slide. And people want to hitchhike from the bottom of Glory Slide. And I don't know, maybe you other guides can chime in here, but it is not appropriate to be hitchhiking at the bottom of Glory Slide and having people stop in the road there. I want to keep it civil, but I also want to kind of send that message out. And if you're headed into the backcountry, it'd be a responsible thing to have skins and be ready to cross the road and skin back up off of the road. If you're going to rely on hitchhiking, either ride all the way down to the Phillips Bench parking area, which is not pictured here, or jump the road and ride all the way down to the Trail Creek trailhead and hitchhike from the bottom of the pass. But hitchhiking in the slide is not only not very smart, but it puts us at risk for losing our access. And that's pretty important for the greater community. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'd like to just like throw out there that that both Twin Slides and Glory Bowl have both hit the road about equally. So just because Twin Slides is slightly lower angle there at the bottom than the Glory Bowl is, if you don't feel comfortable skiing either one of them, don't ski either of them.
Sweet. And as you can see here, I mean, there's lots of other ridgelines and things that offer descents outside of major avalanche slide paths that can be safe on a lot of days, as well as just keeping commuters and the rest of the community safe and happy with the backcountry skiing community, which is at the top of our list. So heed those warnings.
So this is a picture of the Gazex on top of Glory Bowl. There's also one on top of Twin Slides. And they are what the highway forecasters and general workers, YDOT, uses to mitigate avalanche problems when they deem that the road can close and they can actually get them to pull out and rip. Or an avalanche. And so the important thing to remember about these Gazexes is although they're super cool, it is not mitigating the slope for skier traffic. Just because they got a big slide to rip from the Gazex doesn't mean that it's safe for skiers. They're not for skiers. It's to prevent a natural avalanche from ripping onto the highway. And so if it's higher considerable avalanche danger, we just ask people to not ski Glory Bowl or Twin Slides because the cost is just too great.
And I think just for clarification there, like they're not going to run the Gazex if they don't think they're going to produce a slide that has the potential to hit the road. And so honestly, those things are run very infrequently. But anyway, moving on. Izzy, do you want to talk about the west side of Glory here?
I don't actually. I don't ski it that much.
You can see I was trying to pass it off to somebody here.
That was mean, Pat.
Okay. I can talk about it if you'd like.
Yeah, that's great, Pete.
Yeah, so if you look at the very far right side of this picture, just to give you actually just a little bit even further than Ben is pointing, that is where the boot pack goes up from the top of the parking lot. And so if you're trying to access these runs, the west side runs, southwest really, you would go up the boot pack and start dropping immediately west. So the first run that you'll come to is called First Turn. And the reason why it's called First Turn is because it comes out at the first turn west of the top of the parking lot. This is one of the only runs that it's really totally reasonably acceptable to just walk up at the bottom of the run from the end of the run to your car. And we ask that people walk up opposing traffic so that you can actually see the cars coming up on you.
It's
Okay,
still
you don't want the cars coming up behind you. What were you saying, Tom?
It's still a little sketchy though, because those snowbanks are so high. You got to be like really careful. And you have no
Yeah,
escape.
you got to be right up next to the corner. And so that's a reasonable thing to do, but yeah, don't be walking in the road is what I think we're trying to go for. But there's a softer entrance kind of on the right hand side, and that's what we would definitely recommend people do. Dropping into the very top of first turn, there is quite a steep section that can avalanche right there. Yeah, so if you kind of ski those trees a little further, skiers right, that's a really good way to go. And you'll probably see less tracks in there. And we want more powder turns, right? That's the idea. From the top of those same trees, you can ski totally fall line into a run called second turn. That brings you to the second turn off the west side at the top of the pass. For this run, we definitely highly suggest that you go ahead and put skins back on, and there's a lower angle ramp that you can skin up right to the top of a power line and ski down to the bottom of first turn. Walking on the road all the way down from second turn to the top of the pass is not only going to take you a really long time, but it's going to be rather dangerous for you and the other drivers. All right, moving farther west, let's talk about the Snowshoe Bowl. The Snowshoe Bowl is an awesome run, and it's one of my favorite runs on Mount Glory. This run brings you down to the Coal Creek parking lot. So if you didn't run a shuttle, you're going to need to end up hitchhiking from the Coal Creek parking lot. So be prepared for that. It's a really, really fun run. I find that the best way to ski it is kind of right there in the center and then working right into the trees. Skiing down into the gut of it, you could find yourself in a hairy scenario, especially if you're a snowboarder. It does get rather flat in there. So, yep. And then running down the ridge, Calvert's Ridge is what the whole thing is called. This ridge line that connects all these runs together. And there's some really fun skiing right there in those trees, as well as on those more south facing faces looking farther on down the ridge. So there's a lot of really good skiing in there. And you know, as always, just use caution and make reasonable decisions. If you don't know where you're going, try to consult either Tom's guidebook or use your best navigation skills.
We've got a picture of what avalanches hitting the road can look like in a big snow year.
That's a picture of me skiing the Snowshoe Bowl. I told you it was a sweet run.
Nice. You're muted.
I believe that's going up the Glory Boot Pack and then coming down second turn. That photo is actually in the national park. But it could have been on second turn also.
There we go, second turn.
Perfect. So moving on to the south side of Teton Pass. So the road that heads up Teton Pass, we just talked about some of the low-hanging fruit on the north side, which would be Mount Glory. When you're on the road looking south, this is some of what you can see, and it's some of the more intermediate to entry-level slopes that we would recommend people getting into if they are new to the Jackson area. Taking a tour out this past ridge, past Telemark Bowl and Titty Mouse Ridge, out west towards Edelweiss, can provide some great low-angle tree skiing as well as open bowl skiing. From the beginning of the season all the way to the end. I mean, Edelweiss Bowl gets skied every day, and there are little pieces of avalanche terrain on Edelweiss, but for the most part, it has great low angle skiing.
Here's a slide, which it's a one of the spreads in my book, Teton Pass Backcountry Guide. This is a view from Glory looking over at Mount Ellie, kind of a similar view to the last slide, but just panning a little bit farther left. And you can see a lot of the great north-facing terrain off of Mount Ellie in the Bear Claw area, and a lot of the great tree skiing that comes down the east side of Mount Ellie. A lot of those long tracks, or the long arrows there that go down left, are runs that take you down to the bottom of the bottom of the mountain, and you come out at Old Pass Road, and then you leave a car there and go back up, or hitch back up. The first, you can kind of see the highway down there right at the base of the right-hand photo, or actually both photos. You can see the highway. The actual pass is there in the lower right corner of the right-hand photo. And you can see the two ways that people work their way south. One is to go around on the right, around that, on that road cut. And the other way would be to go up the ridge from the pass up to those first shots there, Telemark Bowl and Shivers Ridge, and working on from there. And you really can get good and lost back there. There's lots of great terrain. It pretty much all funnels down into Trail Creek off that east side. But actually some of those gullies can be kind of dangerous. There's some V shapes in there, and there have been some accidents and deaths in those gullies. So you got to be cautious. And you can see on the right side of the right-hand photo, that drainage is actually also Trail Creek. There's two Trail Creeks. One flows east, one flows west. The western flowing Trail Creek, that's the headwater of that creek, and that's where Edelweiss and Thanksgiving Bowl are. And to get there, you can see there's a couple ways to get there off that ridge that goes south of the pass. You can ski down through the trees, or work your way a little higher and then ski down. The way we used to do it in the 80s, with Telemark gear and wax, we didn't even use skins. We just wax out to Mount Ellie and then ski that long line down the ridge to Thanksgiving, Edelweiss that way. And then we would wax our way back up to the pass from the bottom. But yeah, anyway, that's good. Again, looking at Edelweiss Bowl, that's the standard track, goes up those trees up to the top. And Christmas Tree Bowl is where that word ascent is. And the main Edelweiss is to the right of the up track there.
I think the reason we put that picture on there was to avoid people breaking a trail straight up the middle of Edelweiss Bowl. I saw it this December. So don't do that. There's multiple skin tracks that go up Edelweiss. This being the main one, others to the south, and one to the west of the nose as well. So unlikely you're going to need to break trail up Edelweiss Bowl. Here's Edelweiss again. Plenty of room. Sorry, Pete. Plenty of room. And after a lot of people have been out there, I mean, geez, no tracks down the nose for the most part.
All right, so let's talk about Avalanche Bowl. So this is a really fun run, but it definitely requires a little bit of caution on particular days. Ben, do you have your little mousy thing? That would be great. So do you mind pointing at the very farthest right chute there? Very farthest one, even farther. Yep, there we go. So that is actually a zone called the Wolf Trap. And it's been involved in several different accidents, named after a fatality, in fact. And so we don't recommend that anybody skis that chute ever. So if you're going to ski in the Avalanche Bowl, please don't ski the Wolf Trap. It looks like the mellowest angle stuff from the very top, but it is not. And it drops you into a very tight chute that has several different aspects coming into it. If you're going to ski Avalanche Bowl, like I said, use caution, and you're best off skiing farther to the skier's right. We're not going to discuss much in the bear claw. It kind of goes without saying, just from the intensity of its name, that it is a variety of several different avalanche paths. And so if you don't know the snowpack on that day, or if you're just coming into town, it might not be the best place to cut your teeth.
Well said.
Yeah. And then if you want like kind of a really long ridge tour that has several ups and downs, the triple direct route can be really fun. Yeah, it's a good way to see a lot of terrain. And then you can drop down towards the Trail Creek trailhead as well. That's a picture of Izzy.
Walking up to Edelweiss.
So we briefly touched on some of the low-hanging fruit on Teton Pass. We've got a list of some other zones that you can find in Tom's guidebooks, as well as other various guidebooks, if you're looking to explore more. But kind of starting where we recommended, I think is a great area to cut your teeth and, buy a guidebook and you can learn more about some of these other areas. And that's another picture of Izzy.
No, it's not.
Or hire a guide.
Yeah, it was on the last page, right?
Oh, that. Ben just way cooler than I am.
The next page is Benja, fellow Weston athlete, getting rad in a secret undisclosed location on Teton Pass. Very rarely a skin track in this very secret location. So good luck finding it.
Killer. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. That was awesome. So yeah, we're gonna kind of quickly touch on Jackson Hole Mountain Resort backcountry, and really more of just a PSA. Like this is not an area to venture into if you're not familiar with it. It is some of the most extreme, out of the gate terrain I've ever experienced. And it is not the place to just follow people out of a gate, or you can really get into trouble out there. It's all expert terrain, super high risk. And really Cody Peak is what we'll discuss. If you want to access backcountry out the gate terrain at the resort, book a guide. Again, they've got backcountry guides on the resort for a reason. I don't know many resorts that have backcountry guides there, but you get to hit the tram up before anybody else. It's really cool. If you want to check out that terrain and you have the ability level, it's definitely worth it to hire a guide or, go out there with a local, but don't just do it on your own. It is gnarly. This is Cody Peak. It is legit. I mean, you can see these are big, gnarly faces. We didn't even put the names on there because they're gnarly. And I'm going to let the guides talk a little bit about some recent occurrences there, just to touch on the fact that this is serious avalanche terrain.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning the farthest right shot in the picture actually natural avalanched yesterday. And so that zone is called Pucker Face. And it's in a lot of cool like TGR movies and whatnot, and it's a sick run. But you're planning your vacation to Jackson and you watch a movie or whatever, and you say like the first thing we're gonna hit is Pucker Face. That's probably not a very good idea. The biggest thing here would be to if you want to ski that kind of terrain, would be to hire a guide, because those guys that work at the village really know what they're doing and they have their head in the snow in that particular zone all the time. It can be relatively separate in terms of stability and the kind of terrain that you can get into than the rest of the Tetons. And so really like treading with caution in this zone is important.
Absolutely. Hell, the hike out there is is a pucker factor of 10. It's sketchy, man. And like if the wind's blowing 15 miles an hour, like I wouldn't even go near this place. this is a shot of terrain directly under Cody. So, say you go out there and hit Cody Peak and just keep rolling fault line, you're going to run into places like this. I've skied this line and it wasn't fun. It was, sketchy. And there's been slides and fatalities here as well. Again, just please use caution. There's lots of other great areas we're going to discuss for you to hit while you're in the Tetons. And this is Four Pines, right? This is under all that terrain we just showed. Also more avalanche terrain. It's a gnarly area. So I'll let the guides talk about Four Pines in this area a little bit as well quickly before we kind of move into the focus of tonight's presentation.
Yeah, Four Pines is, obviously steep, but just to the right, you'll see Green River Canyon, and you can get in there by traversing in under those cliffs that are up there, visible on the upper right. And that's a nice moderate run. And then you can also go kind of up and over the top of Four Pines and down Pinedale Canyon and traverse back. So those are two nice runs. You can also see there's a traverse track on the far left across that North Mini Hoback that's coming out of No Name Canyon. Those are all great runs, but they're tricky if you don't know them and you don't have a great sense for reading maps and getting around in tricky terrain. I would definitely recommend hiring one of the backcountry guides at the village.
Sweet. Thanks, Tom. And all right, now on to Grand Teton National Park. Just an epic place. This is actually a picture of my wife after a fun tour, almost up 25 short. We got a little turned around, not gonna lie. A lot of different skin tracks. Wish I had one of Tom's books or one of these great guides with me the first time we explored this area. But you know what? The good thing about the park is it's beautiful no matter where you're at. So we focused on, a couple zones to really give you a taste of the park tonight. Again, like this park is massive. I mean, we could do, 2, 3, 4 hours and not even graze all of the amazing terrain in this park. But yeah, if you would, guides, tell us a little bit, about the park, why you love it. And we'll kind of get into the goods here.
Grand Teton's awesome for myriad reasons. I think it's pretty cool the way it's layered. We have the zones that colloquially we call the front four, which we'll spend a bit of time talking about today. That's Mavericks, 25 short, Shadow, Wimpies. And so we've got this front four, and that's kind of your more simple terrain, a lot of graded, moderate slope angle. You can always find something earlier in there. And then you step a little bit further, you go a little bit more elevation gain that gets that much craggier. And then you step another layer back and you're into the high peaks. And so there's just every layer of adventure squeezed into this 40-mile range. The access, I would say, isn't easy, but isn't that hard, at least for the southern part of the central range. The road is closed for a portion of the year, but if you're willing to walk a few miles, you start going uphill pretty quickly. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. If you can walk uphill for a few hours, it's really limitless. The Black Book, which is one of the books mentioned earlier, the last page says, there's never an end to the Tetons. And I think about that often because I've been skiing here for a couple of years and plan to be here for a few more. I've skied the same runs a few times, and every time I want to do something new, there's something out there. So it's really an incredible place. You can find solitude. You can be in areas with more people, have that security. It's great.
Killer. Thanks for that, Izzy. And so quickly, Tom, tell us a brief, history of the park. We're certainly not the first people to go there. And you weren't either, even though you're, one of those people that have been around a while, right?
Yeah, I just get reminded, I like to wander in the summer, and I've walked the shores of Jackson Lake and, just imagined a scene just like that in that picture. And so it does, when I go in the Tetons, I think about that scene all the time, or, scenes like that, and just imagine what it must have been like back then. And, I find artifacts pretty much wherever I go. I do have an eye for it, some people say, but not everybody can find them like I can. But I do leave them now. When I was younger, I collected them, but now I know the value of keeping those artifacts where they were last touched by the original artist. Yeah, and yeah, the mountain men came to, they were in the Tetons, the trappers, and I guess I can connect, I can connect more with the trappers, I suppose, because we're kind of visitors to the area and out to get our fur or whatever. We're out getting our powder. So just being sort of in the food chain like the mountain men were is kind of a cool experience, just to experience it and not try to subdue it, just to try to connect with it and be at peace with it, and just whatever comes yeah. And then the national park was kind of an interesting history. Most of Jackson Hole was owned by ranchers and cattle ranchers mostly, and the story goes that John D. Rockefeller kind of quietly started purchasing these ranches through these shell companies, and so nobody really knew who was purchasing them until he consolidated them and then donated them all to the National Park Service. And so the mountains themselves were established in 1929, but then in 1950, that was the most of the rest of the valley, and that's what Rockefeller that's the land that he consolidated. And any other questions on that? I'm happy to go deeper, but it's great history. There's some great books out there on it.
Yeah, I spent a whole day just researching it and loved it. So if anyone wants more history, just go to the nps.gov website, GRT. Tons of really cool information on the park there. A lot of great wildlife there too. Tom, tell us a little bit about the wildlife there and the issues we've been having with the bighorn sheep.
Yeah, so when you're out in the backcountry, I was going to say you're likely to see moose. That's the way it used to be. You'd pretty much see a moose every time you would go out. Now it's a little less, and the moose are starting to become a threatened species. They're not reproducing, and they're getting hit by cars quite a bit. We lose a dozen a year at least on the Teton Village Road alone, from just people driving too fast at night usually, and not being aware that these dark bodies are standing in the middle of the road. Lots of bears here in the summer, and they linger into the winter, like the famous grizzly 399 was out as late as in the middle of December or something this year, or late December, wandering around Jackson Hole. The elk, they tend to migrate down into the lowlands and they get stopped by the refuges where they're fed. And there's some pros and cons with that. The big issue that we deal with in the Tetons is the bighorn sheep, as I mentioned. And just today, I'll post this video that Teton Backcountry Alliance just produced in concert with Patagonia and Chris Kitchen. Let's see, there's the link. It's a great video. Kind of tells a little bit about the issue concerning the preservation of the Teton bighorn sheep herd, and the relationship between skiers and the herd, and how we affect them, and kind of Kim Havel's she's the star of the show, and she gives a really nice description of how she approaches her tours in the park, and it's a great mindset to have that she has. It's just very respectful, and putting the nature and the sheep first before her desires for big lines or powder.
So, absolutely, wildlife's absolutely one of the best resources we have. Super important to protect it. So, all right, we're almost into the terrain, and I just wanted to give the guides a chance to just discuss kind of some basic park etiquette, just like Teton Pass. So jump into it for us, gang.
So maybe we can work on this one together. But like Tom was talking about, because of the sheep, we have certain areas in the national park that are closed to winter travel. Correct me if I'm wrong, through April 1st, or maybe that got extended in the last 2 years to May 1st.
I think so.
What did that get changed, Tom?
I think so. I think it's still, open. It opens May 1st.
Okay. I remember back when I skied the village more, it would open April 1st and we could go out and ski hunt the last few days of the village, but that's something worth considering. These goat closures are now through May 1st. So if you could go to protectthepowder.com or something like that, you can see those closures.
Yeah,
Don't poach the powder.
Yeah,
Don't poach the powder. Sorry. But yeah, there, like we said earlier on, there's multiple guided operations that operate inside the park: Teton Backcountry Guides, Exum, and Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. And so there's always somebody willing to take you out in the national park if you want some help getting around and learning the area. There's a lot of great weather resources as well. And pets, we've been seeing more and more pets this year walking around on the trails. And the rule is pets can go leashed where cars can go in the summertime. And so that means they can go leashed on the closed inner park road where people go snowshoeing and cross country skiing. But I think the biggest takeaway there is respecting the wildlife. If pets get off leash in the park, it tends to put a lot of pressure on the moose that already have a lot of pressure on them. You guys have anything to add here?
No drones.
No drones.
No drones. Grand Teton is one of the most aesthetic places in the world. You can take all the photos, get out your camcorder, but no drones. Drones are pretty offensive, both to wildlife and recreational users, due to the noise that they create. So please don't bring a drone into the park. You can apply for filming permits, which that same rules apply, but just make sure you're respecting people's space with that.
Absolutely. I think it's reasonable to mention just like the weather and being prepared for that. A lot of times the forecast may not be particularly spot on in the park, and being prepared for any weather condition is important. Particularly like it gets very windy. Sometimes it'll snow when the forecast says it's not snowing. Sometimes it'll get really hot. And so just kind of being prepared for all conditions and not skimping on the gear will help you have a much better time out there in the park.
I mean, us as guides, we go out there ready to spend the night with an injured client, right? That means bringing a few extra layers, as well as rescue equipment. So consider what you're bringing out there. I think as part of one of the last Slay at Home series, there was gear talked about. And so having an extensive backcountry kit when you're heading further away from the road is super important. And so definitely consider that when you're headed out.
Absolutely. And one last bit, leave no trace, right? Leavenotrace.org. If you're unfamiliar with the 7 principles of leave no trace, they're similar to the 5 on here, but definitely check out leavenotrace.org if you're not familiar with that stuff. Sweet. Next up, we'll kind of discuss the roads and trailheads too. I'll let the guides touch on this stuff.
Yeah, so essentially Grand Teton National Park is directly north of Jackson. So you'll just hop on Main, driving north of Jackson, and you'll pass the Jackson Hole Airport on your left. And to get into Grand Teton National Park, if you're going to the general southern zones of the range, south central, I suppose, you would turn at Moose Wilson Road. So there's just a big brown sign that says Moose. You'll cross there, and if you're going to the Bradley Taggart Trailhead, you'll go through the visitors entrance. There is a fee usually, but sometimes they're not fully open. So, it's just kind of a gamble whether or not you'll have to pay the entrance fee, which I believe is $10.
Oh, I think it's more than that now.
Is it? Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't paid it. I just buy the annual every year because
Yeah.
it's like what we can do. In fact, that's a good point. Just buy the annual pass. It's like,
There you go.
yeah, keep the park service open. They need the funding. So the Teton Park Road, Moose Wilson Road is how you would get to the southern zone. It's really important to know that you cannot drive directly from the Teton Village or from Wilson directly to the Bradley Taggart or Death Canyon trailheads. A lot of people get stuck up with that. It is closed at the Granite Canyon trailhead. And so if you think you can cut off a little bit of time in the winter, it's actually going to end up burning you a whole lot more time. You got to go all the way around through Jackson and then all the way up to the Bradley Taggart and Death Canyon trailheads. If you're trying to ski in the northern end of the park, there's several pullouts, but I think most people to go do day trips kind of either park at Signal Mountain Lodge or at Coulter Bay. But that little zone that says Lizard Creek, there are some cool ski zones up there as well.
Sweet. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on.
Well, 25 short, it's kind of the bread and butter ski tour. Whether it's your first time in Jackson, skiing in the national park, or your 100th time, there's always something to do on 25 short. We say intermediate to advanced because, it's nothing particularly steep if you're skiing the east face of it. Probably like a double blue run at most Mountain West resorts. But it's a big tour. It's just over 3,000 feet from Carr to the summit. The summit's one of the most spectacular places. You're staring up at the high peaks if it's a bluebird day. But yeah, some like great ridgeline skiing, east facing, pretty open trees from the summit to about the last third. You can see in that photo, the bottom third of the peak, the trees get tighter. That definitely gets into like the stronger skier you are, the easier the out track is. The out track, which is also your skin track up generally, just tight trees, pretty thick. It can get kind of icy, lugey, so just having your wedge dialed. And if you're a split boarder, I'm sure there's a lot of us on this webinar that are split boarders, either being comfortable one footing, split skiing, and if it comes down to it, just putting your skins back on to get out, because I've had people tweak their knees right there, and it's a bummer. 25 short's great. There's some steeper, more advanced terrain off the north side of it. You're looking to add some spice into your life. There's couloirs, some that you need ropes for, some that you don't, but pretty cool mountain. And it's connected to a bunch of other terrains, so you can walk the ridge for a while. But yeah, 25 short's a go-to. Lots of different ridges to ride. Yeah, in this photo, you can see 25 short. Just to the left of that, we've got Coolers Bowl, which is definitely a huge avalanche path and kind of no-go terrain for a lot of the year, but great open terrain skiing when it is. And then you can walk that ridge up to 10,696, which is a pretty cool peak to ski from, big open face. And then up above that is Buck Peak, which is one of those high alpine peaks, more of a springtime ski. Over all the way to the left is Mavericks, which is a zone that I think we'll talk about next. But that's the view from the parking lot. So you get a pretty good idea of where you're going to go. That's probably just approaching the summit, looks like. Like I said, great view. You can see a couple of the couloirs that run off the north side there. Just over the skyline. That's in Turkey Chute, which is not far ways from the summit of 25 short. Moderately steep, but pretty wide couloir. Usually has a lot of cracks in it.
I was gonna say, expect an avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's often wind loaded, and if you're the first one in there, it will avalanche. Not always a problem, but it takes expert riding ability to be able to handle that kind of hazard. So, go with Izzy and she'll ski cut it for you.
We're on to the flames.
So this is a really good picture of kind of the greater zone south of 25 short. On the right half of the screen, you've got Maverick, which is kind of a pyramid shaped peak and an excellent ski for early season touring. Has a lot of low angle terrain. It certainly has, some gullies that act as terrain traps and things like that, but it is a great place to go if you feel comfortable avoiding avalanche terrain when the hazard is slightly elevated, if you have the eye to be able to recognize what is and what is not avalanche terrain. I can throw in a pitch here for split boarders learning how to split ski efficiently. I think that is a huge part of being an efficient backcountry ski partner, especially in places like Grand Teton National Park. It is very rare that I would go a day without split skiing. Definitely in the park, I'm always going to be split skiing at some point. And so it's a skill that you want to have if you want to be able to tackle some of these longer days and not be kind of the guy dragging behind, So there's some other peaks labeled in this picture. These are great opportunities to step out into once you've kind of gotten your feet wet in Mavericks and 25 short, learn the terrain, understand the snowpack, and stepping out into some bigger objectives. Great opportunity to hire a guide like Pete or Izzy or myself.
Sweet. We just had a question. Do you split ski with skins on? And I think this picture might answer that question.
The answer is that you can split ski with skins on, but what I'm referring to is split skiing without skins on. Being able to do a little bit of sidestepping as well as exiting some of these luge tracks that were referenced at the bottom of 25 short and the front four. It really adds efficiencies to your day to be able to split ski with a free heel out of any terrain. And I know there's probably a lot of folks out there that are always trying to get those heel lockers. And I'm here to tell you that it is not necessary. There are people like Ben Jaglatz right here sending pillow lines with free heels. So you don't need a heel locker to split ski a luge track. The answer would be to just practice more and get better.
Yeah.
So sorry. I was gonna say, if you're new to split skiing, you can start with skins on, and that's a great place to start because you won't go as fast. But eventually, if you get the technique down, it becomes harder almost to split ski with skins on because it's harder to change edges. But I even did one on, one off for a while just to manage speed.
Yeah. This seems like a good time for you guys to plug hard boots.
Yeah, that was my next point. I mean, part of the reason Ben is able to send pillows with split skis and a free heel is because all three of us, for the most part, utilize hard boots for split boarding. It's something that I've been using exclusively for at least 8 years. I haven't owned a pair of hard boot or soft boot split board bindings um, pretty much since my first year split boarding. I quickly switched to modified AT boots for split boarding using the Phantom Snow Industries system, and have been loving it ever since. I'll even ride hard boots inbounds. I think the common misconception is that they are stiffer and, not as surfy. And I have told so many people, including clients, how wrong they are about that. I mean, you can get a hard boot, split board boot to perform even softer than a lot of soft boots. So the nice thing about it is that it's a replicable boot that doesn't pack out and change stiffnesses over time. It creates a lot of efficiencies in terms of weight on the uphill, as well as being able to add a cramp on and have better response for ski mountaineering. And so, for the most part, yeah, I highly recommend split boarding in hard boots. And we are actually offering demos of the Phantom Splitboard hard boot system at Teton Backcountry Rentals this year. So if anybody wants to test those out and kind of see what they're missing, come on in any night between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. and we'll show you what's up.
Yeah, buddy. I second that. Izzy converted me a few years back and I've never looked back. I sold my soft boot bindings a year or two ago. And yeah, only thing I did in soft boots last year before was complain that I didn't ride my hard boot setup. It's awesome. It's mind blowing how great it is. I mean, and don't knock it till you've tried it. Again, like I hang out with a lot of pro snowboarders on our crew and they're always knocking hard boots, and every year a few more come over to the dark side. And it's awesome. Anything you can do in soft boots, you can do in hard boots. It's the carpenter, not the tools. And I feel like a billy goat when I'm out in the mountains in my hard boot setup. It's rad. So
it's really
all right, on to more sick stuff. Oh, and basically another fun joke is split boarders are really skiers 95% of the time. Prove me wrong. You like that one, Pete?
I liked that one a lot. Yeah.
Well, you need to know how to split ski.
I know. You guys make me want to split ski.
Well, I get to ski and snowboard every day. You just get to ski.
I just get to ski. That's true. Like I'm like half as talented as you guys. I'm impressed. Yeah. Speaking of, this is a picture of me getting pitted at Mavericks.
Nice. Every one of these pictures of Benja getting rad is on hard boots.
Yep.
And he's got walk mode so his ankles don't hurt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I could go on and on about the advantages. If you want to hear about that, hit me up.
Cool. So yeah, here's a couple of other zones that are in the park and to work up and explore too. A lot of these we're just recommending hire a guide rather than trying to give you the info. I really do feel that the route finding, if you're not familiar with any of these zones that are in the park, is so challenging that you could really get yourself into trouble if you're not on it. And your day is just going to be so much better if you hire a guide. Seriously, we'll find you the goods, and you don't have to make any decisions, which is kind of what you want, right? Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, definitely a couple of these stick out. I've definitely failed multiple times at a couple of these zones. So yeah, I would second that as well.
we've touched on some of these, or we haven't touched on some of these areas that are included in our forecast zone. So going back to one of the first few slides that Ben showed was of the Teton forecast zone. To the northeast and to the south are two other forecast zones that JH Avalanche also covers. To the northeast, we've got Togety Pass at the bottom of this list. And to the south of the Tetons, we have the Palisades area, Snake River Canyon, Grays River area. And I think the main thing we want to say about these areas is that they tend to have a weaker snowpack, mainly because they get less snow. And to put it simply, these areas act more like a Colorado snowpack than a Pacific Northwest snowpack. And what keeps the Tetons from having these huge widespread avalanche cycles that we're seeing this time of year, I mean, not to say that we're immune to it, we just tend to have a deeper snowpack, and so it is harder to reach the problems. But if you venture out and dig deeper into our forecast center, you will see avalanches every week on our deep persistent layers in these areas: Togety Pass, Palisades, Snake River Canyon, even this week. So I don't know if any of you guys want to dive deeper into any of these outlying areas, but the point is to go there with caution.
I would put a plug in just for Togety. If you find yourself in the Jackson area early season, like, November, December, you thought it was going to be a good year in the Tetons, but you end up here, it's a little bit dry in the Tetons. Togety is a good spot because it is quite a bit higher. The pass is about 9,000 feet. So early season, that's a great place because there's usually quite a bit more snow than the Tetons. You don't have to walk on dirt in your ski boots. So that's where you'll find me generally, November, December, if I'm riding.
Totally. Yeah, I want to put a plug in if you are going to go up to Togety and you're trying to avoid finding yourself in a tricky situation. I guess, south, like the more southern side of Angle Mountain can be a good way to play that game because there's quite a bit of more sustained pitch that is not particularly steep over there.
Killer. All right. Well, we'll just move on to a few stoke photos. We've got, about 10 more minutes before we all got to sign off here. Let us know if you have more questions. We got a few more just epic images here, and then even some secret stashes to check out. So boom, feel free to let us know where this stuff is, or just let us know that it's awesome and in the park.
This is an undisclosed. Yeah, this is me. This is an undisclosed location.
Sick.
That's on top of the South Teton on the triangle face. It's a really, really fun ski descent, but if you want to ski something like that, working up to it is really important. And like we've been plugging the whole day, if you want to ski something like that, start working with a guide rather than just hiring them once or twice. I can speak for myself that I will not take anybody their first time out to ski the South Teton. These are more undisclosed locations. And then, here's a good time to put a plug in for Teton Backcountry Guides, one of my primary employers, previously known as Rendezvous Backcountry Tours. Tom worked for back in the day. If you want to get far away from other people and not see too many tracks, we do offer yurt rentals as well as guided yurt trips. And all of our yurts are on the west side of the Tetons. It's super fun skiing over there. It's usually a pretty deep snowpack because when storms come through, it just dumps in that zone. And if you want to come out with us, we can have a lot of fun out there. Here's an area that is quite far from the trailheads. But once again, as guides, we're always trying to just get away from the masses on our days off. So this is an area near Jenny Lake. And that's a picture of me skiing off the middle Teton. Once again, it's big, it's gnarly. And if you want to ski something like that, we definitely recommend starting to work with a guide.
That's at the bottom of Shadow, I think. There's a fun like pillow line that you can link up. That's my partner doing something cool. He's much better at doing cool things. That's off the south side of Shadow Peak. It's fun to get the timing right on south facing things here. Got to be there at the right time, but yeah, fun couloir. Believe that's heading up one of the hourglass couloirs on Nez Perce. So getting up into the high alpine in the park, and that photo on the right, that's the summit of the Grand Teton sticking out. That was a pretty cool day watching the clouds come in and out. And then here's a good springtime adventure. The road gets melted out and plowed, and there's this period of time where the cars aren't allowed, so you can ride your bike. There's my shitty 1975 Schwinn bike propelling me to a great ski adventure. I think this is somewhere up on Tiwanaut, another high alpine adventure. Really cool looking down at the valley, and yeah, just incredible rock formations.
More undisclosed locations that you could go with a guide. I think, Pete, there's somebody in the questions asking to clarify about kind of working with the guide and how you recommend sharing goals and building skills over multiple occasions. I think that's a great point to clarify. I think when Pete said he didn't want to go out with someone their first time on the South Teton, he meant the first time that they skied together, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, not the first time that person's ever been skiing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, more like, so if you want to ski those big objective skis, I think the thing is that you need to start working with a guide in order for them to be able to have confidence in your skill set and you being able to be a competent member of a team, right? And so, we can take you up there, but it's always riskier when you go higher. And so we need, as guides, for our guests to be reliable. And when I say reliable, I mean that we know that you are not going to fall up there. We know that you're going to follow directions. We know that you are capable of skiing the line so that we can choose appropriate terrain, because at the end of the day, our job is to provide an experience that's going to be awesome. But we also, our job is really to bring you back to the trailhead alive.
Killer. Awesome. So yeah, you saw a few more rad photos there from the crew here. And here, as promised, is the secret stashes. Hopefully we don't piss off too many locals here. But yeah, Pat, feel free to run us through some of these secrets here. This is some pretty important information here. I would say the rec center is probably my favorite local secret here as well. I've spent a lot of time in those hot tubs. And there a water slide there too, or am I thinking of Revelstoke?
There's the Revelstoke one is better, but there is a water slide. I don't know what the program is with the rec center during COVID. I haven't been.
Oh yeah,
here.
totally.
So I'm not willing to comment directly on that, but some of these other secret stashes, hit the stagecoach after a day on the pass, and then obviously some other good grub in town. Always nice. And then some of our local shops here, including mine, for some rentals. And then, yeah, probably the cheapest, healthiest food you can get is at the Whole Foods in town. So don't be shy there. These other spots, if you want some of that greasy spoon, go for it. I love the Creekside Market for a sandwich, and Persephone for breakfast. But any other favorites, guys, you want to chime in on?
I'm a big fan of Picnic. I live down the street and they have some mean breakfast sandwiches at a fairly good price.
And Cafe Genevieve next to Persephone is good.
There's good food here.
Again. Cool. Some pretty basic options for sleeping. Definitely can't be camping on Teton Pass or on the city limits on the streets. You will get hassled about that, especially on the pass. It happens from time to time, and it prevents YDOT from plowing the pullout. You will not be a favorite person up there if you keep other people from parking on Teton Pass come dawn. So don't do that. There's some other, basic options that you could hit up, starting with some of the cheaper ones, going down to some ranches and things like that. So yeah, do your homework, find a friend, and don't bring COVID to Jackson.
Yeah, buddy. All right. So that is about our time, gang. Let us know if there are any last minute questions. Let me just scroll through here and see if I see any, but let us know in the chat if there's any last minute questions here. Jordan asks, next week he's hoping to do 25 short. He or she, sorry for making that assumption, but is Shadow Peak's lower east face a good option for a mellow day too? I know my experience on Shadow Peak, and it wasn't mellow at all. So I'll let the guides address that one.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason we didn't specifically address Shadow is because it takes what I would consider advanced to expert terrain evaluation to be able to make good decisions on it. It's not just super straightforward, like 25 short, like this is a huge slide path, or this is a gully that's a terrain trap. Like there is places that you need to know where to turn to avoid, avalanche terrain as well as cliffs. And so there's not a great blanket answer for that. If you know how to evaluate terrain and read maps, the park is endless. But to just say that you can head out to Shadow as a good option, that's the reason why we avoided specifically jumping into it. And so maybe exploring Mavericks for day 2 is a better option for you.
Yeah, buddy. Well, awesome. Again, big shout out to all these great panelists. Pat, thanks so much for being here, brother. Everybody go see Pat at Teton Backcountry Rentals. Tom, thanks so much for being here. Everybody check out his books at selectpeaks.com. I know I'll be hitting you up as well to add anything you have available to my collection. Pete, man, so good to see you, bud. Thanks so much for being here as well.
Of course.
Love seeing those ski photos, buddy. You just make me want to get back, on there. I've already got the boots, right? I mean, what am I waiting for? I'm already skiing 95% of my day. And Izzy, always a pleasure, Izzy. You're just one of my favorite humans. I'm just, I'll just lay that out there. Stoked to have you.
Thanks,
all
Ben.
involved with tonight's presentation. Let people know how to get a hold of you guys. Drop, any information you want here in the comments. And again, everybody that tuned in tonight, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. We just love connecting with the backcountry community. Again, big shout out to everybody in town for Teton Split Fest. Cam, I see you, buddy. Keep up all the good work, man. We're stoked to be a part of what you're doing, man. And anybody next week, tune in. We're doing another State of the Snowpack on Utah, and we're doing some demos with the website for the Utah Avalanche Center. So tune in for that. We've got a couple episodes left, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again for tuning in to the Slay at Home series, and we'll see you on the skin track.
Thanks, man.